Hello friends and gamers, and welcome to a brand new YouTube war. My name is Jinx and this here is Kimberly. She just woke up and I wanted to finish this video so she's a bit sad. Let's see if she cheers up as I talk about my board game. It's a brand new YouTube board game I'm playing. New on my shelf, the Kings and Kaisers game. Now this is set in a World War I setting. It's built on the bones of Axis and Allies 1914. It's got all kinds of unique and new different features. It's a global map, so that means there's going to be action across the entire world. And of course those games are somewhat hard to arrange because you have to make it interesting enough globally while at the same time focusing much of your attention in Europe as well. This game has several new nations to be added to the roster. We have the Soviet Russians. If the Russian Civil War occurs, then you have the White Russians and the Red Russians fighting it out. Then you have the Empire of Japan is played by Britain. And then you have the Empire of China played by the Allies, and then the Republic of China played by the Central Powers as well. So that's an interesting lineup. The victory points are also interesting as well, where you have stuff like minor cities where people are fighting over major cities. You have a whole list of victory points to struggle after. Axis and Allies 1914, you had to hold on to the capital territories of your opponents to win the game. In this game, it's built more around victory points, where it's, let's say if you have the Western Front, control more territories on the Western Front. Africa controlled more territories in the African theater. Russian Revolution, you get a victory point for that. The Pacific colonies, you have different things like that going for you. The game is intended to only go for 10 or 12 rounds, something like that, and no more than that. So it'll be a nice kind of weekend game as opposed to multiple weekends where some games can go into 20 turns or something like that in Axis and Allies, given the right circumstances. So then you have, like I said, the global map, which is all kinds of interesting stuff. You could produce units in your capital cities, but also in your major cities as well. Later on, you could also even build them in military depots as well, too. But we'll get into that because that's a technological feature. Now you have more convoy lines on the world as well. The Chinese, then we talk about political situations. The Chinese don't come into action until turn 3. So that's the way that situation goes. The tanks can be built, I believe, on turn 4, and bombers on turn 3. And the Americans join the fight. I think it is something like turn. What does it say here? Beginning of fifth turn, America would join the fight, unless certain circumstances like the South Americas are invaded or the unrestricted submarine warfare is engaged. Then you have, of course, the Russian Civil War, as I mentioned. Technology is different in this game too. They've included technology. Essentially, you purchase a technology token for 5, and then with every tech token you have, you roll 2 dice, and on a result of 5 or 6, you get a technology, and then you roll that same dice that succeeded again, and on a list of 1 to 6, you get a certain feature. Now, there's stuff like improved naval mines. There's 6 techs. That's improved naval mines. You roll 2 dice instead of 1 for naval mines. Minefields means that for every, if you're being attacked in that territory, you roll a certain amount of dice, up to 6 dice. On a roll of 1, you take off an enemy casualty before they start rolling. Poison gas, you attach it to your artillery, and you can paralyze enemy infantry from defending. Machine guns give you a +1 for up to 3 units on attack and defense. Trench works and barbed wire cancel 3 hits from the enemy attacking into your territory, or 4 hits with barbed wire. And then military bases, which I referred to before as military depots and naval ports, allow you to build units outside of your major cities and your capital cities. So it's feasible that if the Germans succeed in this tech, they can build a military base in Germany, East Africa, and start producing units there each turn. Likewise with naval ports as well, they could do something along those lines. So that's quite interesting. You have new units introduced into the base. Standard game is just cavalry. That's the only thing you could introduce. I'm playing with Risk Cavalry, and that's all I'm playing with. And my daughter will play with them as well if she wants to. And then you have expanded unit list, which is trucks, railway guns, zeppelins, bombers, airship bases, and a couple of hero units as well. These are just optional add-ons if people want to play with the expanded unit list. We're going to play with like a slight combination with the standard stuff, but as well as zeppelins, because we thought that would be a nice little balancing act there as well. That's one that's worthwhile including too, because Germany starts with zeppelins. Other than that, nobody else starts off with any of the expanded unit lists. So for balance purposes, I think it's appropriate to include zeppelins into this. I don't have any zeppelin pieces. I have just this little Fat Man atomic bomb I was thinking about using, but we'll have to see about that. Now, Submarines are working differently. They work better, in my opinion. They have first strike and they have target selection, unless they're detected by a cruiser. And now cruisers have two postures. One posture is more of a scouting role, kind of in the form of a destroyer, because they've combined destroyers and cruisers into one. So in a destroyer posture, it could negate two submarines, first strike, and target selection, but it rolls at two. But as a cruiser role, it rolls at three, but can't negate subs. So that's kind of a neat way of taking care of that business. The Japs have to stay over in the Pacific Theater, so that's also worthwhile mentioning. And I think that boat covers all the complexities behind this. Aircraft, the way they work is the game doesn't start with any fighters. It's 1914 after all. It was mostly a scouting role initially, and then later on, I think it's a couple turns in. It's not too far in, and you start being able to put them on the map. I'll take a look at that momentarily. But aircraft, the way they work, like same with the Zeppelins, is you couldn't go into a sea zone and attack a navy, but you have to return back on land or pair it with a destroyer that's undamaged. And then you do your collect income. Now, convoy rating is a little different as well. For every submarine, you roll 2 dice. Every other warship, you roll 1 dice. And the way it works is on these convoy marker spots on the map, you roll your appropriate amount of dice. Let's say the subs roll 2 dice for 1 submarine, and a roll of 4 or more is ignored, but let's say you roll 3 on one and a 6 on the other. Then you go 3 plus the 1 ship in that area will get you 4 potential IPCs you can take off the enemy, and then you deduct it from the adjacent enemy land income that they have in the adjacent territories. Other ships like dreadnoughts could also convoy raid, but the downside there is they only roll the 1 dice, and also you know if they roll 4 or more, it's a miss, but if it's 1 to 3, it's a hit plus the 1. Dreadnoughts also have the downside of that they can't. Once they are damaged, they roll a 3 and they can't be, and they move only 1 space as well. So you don't want to get too far from your places where you can build up your units. So that means in the case of Germany, like you don't want to send your dreadnoughts all the way to the Mediterranean Ocean or into the South Atlantic, because you're not going to be able to repair them that handily. All right, fighters come into the fight. Maybe they come in straight from the start, I believe. Yeah, that might be it. They come in turn 1, but you have to build them. So you don't start the game with them, but you have to build them. So that's an interesting thing. And then you can do strategic bombing raids with your bombers and your zeppelins as well. And that covers it. Oh, one last thing, I guess, of importance is you get national objectives as well. National objectives gives you a little bit extra income. In the case of, say, Germany as an example, if Germany gets 2 IPCs per territory of this list, Belgium, Picardy, Brittany, Aquitaine, and Provence. If it has British territory or French territory in Africa, then it has $1 per those territories and that kind of thing. So that vein of idea. The rulebook itself is only 32 pages, excluding the setup charts. 32 pages is completely a readable book in the course of one sitting. So I'm really excited to play about this game. Now going on to the actual specific game, this operation is called Operation Tannenberg. And I'm very pleased with the name because I came up with it myself. It was my suggestion that got taken to, and people liked it. So that's awesome. I'm playing as Germany, which is great. It means it's a 6-person game, and I'm going to have some allies and some opponents, multiple opponents, I guess. So I'm playing as Germany. We have Mr. Scrubbert playing as the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We have Moscow playing as the Ottomans, plus the Republic of China. Then on the Entente side, we have the British are being played by Chris Ironsides, the British and the Japanese. We have the French being played by Madman, and Italy and played by Madman. And then we might even have the Empire of China played by Madman too, if I remember correctly. And then lastly, we have, as the Russians and the Americans, we have Prussian Gamer. So that's going to be a lot of fun playing it this way. Really looking forward to it. One of the things that is different in this game, or one of the things that I have to think about differently in this game, is the fact that in my Operation Schlieffen, I ended up making a video for each. I made a video for each of my Central Powers players, and prior to that, I made a slideshow for each previous turn. So, as an example of Germany, or even the Ottomans, for every Ottoman turn, I'd make a slideshow of what the French and the British did on their turn. For the Austrians, I'd do what the Italians and the Americans did. For Germany, it was what the Russians did. So that was nice that way. I could make it thematic. It was short, 10-minute videos. And in this case, I can't do the same thing because it would be a German video. But prior to the German video, it would be like 10 or 15 minutes of slideshow of what the Austrians did, what the Russians did, it's a little bit too much stuff. So I've been trying to think of a clever way to do it. and to make it thematic and engaging and interesting and kind of provide a bit of information to the people viewing the turn as well. And the thing I've come up with is just do a little video prior to my turn and go in analytical detail and say, this is what the Austrians did on their turn, and this is what they did, and this is what they did, and kind of work it up way from that, if that makes sense. If you guys have any other suggestions on what to do, I'll try to make it as interesting as possible to all people involved, but there's going to be limits to what I can do, and still keep the videos relatively brief. So there's that. Now I want to continue on with going over some of the board and the setup of what things look like. And so I'll see you guys momentarily. Kimmy, say goodbye. Bye. Wave. Go wave like that to you. Bye. Alright, so I am playing as Germany. As you may notice, I have a couple commander tokens out here on the map. Now, I'm not sure about that. They're kind of big, to be honest, but if I reduce their size, they're hard to read, so I may or may not play with them, but I thought for thematic purposes, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to include them at least a little bit right at the start, just for the fun. So the German situation is over here. It might be a little bit hard to judge what's where, but just look at the pieces on the map. The map itself isn't colored, but I actually don't mind it at all. I thought it might be a bigger issue to me, but I like how the map itself is what populates on who controls what territory. I like that. That seems to make sense to me. So I'm playing as Germany, and I start off with a couple texts already on the map. In the case of Alsace over here, I start with a machine gun. Likewise, the French do as well. So that's going to be a little fun. Now, the British, I have the option of not going to war with them on turn 1. I think they join into the fight at the end, or on the British turn of turn 2. So I could attack them this turn on Germany's turn 1, or next turn on Germany's turn 2 as well. So that's one of the options, and then they wouldn't get into the picture until a little bit later. Now, there's arguments on either side of that, and one of the things is, hey, you know, if you can hold them off for 2 turns before they, or a turn and a half before they do any action against you, then that's a chance where you can do some damage against the French, theoretically, right, and really push hard into some French territories. It's a possibility. We'll have to see how that pans out. There's other things too that you'll miss out on, is some of the national objectives on the map. But this is a German situation here. The territories have been a little bit adjusted on the eastern front too. And so what that means is that, well, the Russians have plenty of territory here, and we have East Poland, and over here we have Silesia. And the Polish units are quite strong there. So on the Russian turn, they're likely going to stack up a pile of units here and cause some problems for me. So I'll have to think about a good solution against that issue. Anyways, that's it for kind of German strategy. There's a few other things going on here, but perhaps that's something worthwhile doing on another day. I want to talk about my setup here and some of the pieces that came with the game. So I've got this battle board, and I actually quite like it because it's actually made of very thick material. It's actually got no flex at all, so you can actually, you know, hold it like this and keep a bunch of dice on it as well, and it won't have any impact on anything. It's pretty neat how that works out. You know, like fairly heavy objects as well, and it won't bend whatsoever. So very rigid material. I like that idea. Now over here we have like a general tracker as well, and so I've sticky tacked some of the roundels on there for now so they don't slide around, because I've got kids and, you know, accidents can happen, and, and so I don't want to mess things up. And they also provide some bingo chips here as well to cover over some of the victory points, and I don't have enough of them. I ran out of the blue fairly quickly just doing the minor cities, so that's I don't know if I'm not supposed to do the minor cities or something. But anyways, so that's the situation there. Collectively, the income is for the Central Powers, we're at 83. And for the Entente, they're at 149. So that's huge on their end of things. That's pretty massive. We have a big economic disadvantage to overcome. That, of course, includes the Americans, I believe, but it doesn't include the Chinese because I haven't included them on the board here. The reason I haven't, I think, yeah, I'll have to double check it, but the reason I think I haven't included the Chinese is because they don't even get to produce units until a certain time, or collect income until a certain time. But I could very well be wrong in that one, because if I am wrong, that might be worthwhile just to have them straight from the start already adding their stuff. Yeah. Well, I'll look into that a little bit later. Other pieces that we have on the board here is these national objective cards, which is an easier way of keeping track of everything. So I'm just putting a little roundel on each one as the territory is either acquired or the national objective is reached or whatever. It's interesting. I like it. I like the way that works out. So pretty interesting stuff. We have the African theater here. We have Germany, East Africa stacked up a little bit. I used to have this Paul von Lito Vorbeck. in here as well. So I have them in this territory, just for fun, just for flavor purposes. And we have the Pacific Theater here, where you have Tsingtao, a couple of German fleets as well to play around with. Now it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this game. So that's it, guys. Stay tuned to watch the series as they unfold. And please feel free to comment on any suggestions and ideas you have. Cheers!